Alright, what's up, guys? If you can hear me, let me know in the chat. Looks like everything should be working. If you can't hear me, let me know. But yeah, so there's some pretty big news out of iiRcade. I guess it's 4:15, so I can officially get into it. And give me 1 second. Okay, cool. All right, guys. So here's sort of the news. I'm going to go through it step by step. I haven't had a lot of time to spend with it because this is really fresh. The two big questions I've seen from the community, and if you guys have other questions, drop them in the chat about iiRcade, is when's the Kickstarter coming? Pretty much everyone agrees $2.99 is a good price. That is a good price. Even if you're not interested in this product, that's a killer price, given the quality of hardware. When's that going to hit? And then what games are we getting with it? So first off, the Kickstarter is announced. As of right now, this minute, it's June 23rd, 11 a.m. Eastern. It will go live. I do not have any word how many units will be available. So when you set up a Kickstarter, you get to pick how many different units you can buy. And once those are sold out, they're gone. So this is going to be a limited selection. I doubt it's going to be a tiny number because the goal for iiRcade is to get as many people buying it as possible. All right, so that's when the Kickstarter will be live. On that day, on Tuesday, I'm going to have the founder, Jong, on a live stream. We're going to do an interview. So there's that. We'll come back to that. Next thing is, which games are we going to get with the cabinet? I've always wondered how many games are we going to get. We now know there will be 10 preloaded games. And here's the big one. So we know we're getting Double Dragon. We're also getting another game with Dragon in the name. It's kind of mind-blowing to me that iiRcade's the first one to come with this, but you guessed it, it's Dragon's Lair. So we're going to have an official Dragon's Lair ROM ready to go with every iiRcade sold, apparently. So I think that's exciting. I did not grow up playing Dragon's Lair, to be honest with you guys. A little before my time, never really got into it. But to a lot of people, that's pretty exciting, I would imagine. So we'll go ahead and put that up on the background. All right. So, I guess, what do you guys think? I mean, the cabinet's going to be $2.99. That's Kickstarter. We know when this goes full price, it's going to be significantly more expensive. We're going to be looking at $500-600 for the base cab. Would you be in at $2.99 knowing it comes with these games, or is that too much? Would you pay $600? Is that crazy? I mean, I'm sincerely curious because this is kind of a big experiment right now for the community. Are people willing to pay for an additional player for the arcade market? And actually, I was going to do a video earlier before this announcement dropped. I'm really glad I held off, as before I knew Dragon's Lair was coming. And that video was just, is there a place for the market for iiRcade? And there's been this sentiment, sort of this fervor over the last few months, especially the last 30 days, I think, where some folks are questioning that and wondering, do we need another player? But I think a lot of people asked that, and myself included, by the way, when we got into at Games doing a Legends Ultimate, because now we all accept that's a good product, but before that ever came out, a lot of people assumed it was junk. And honestly, and I got a free cab from them, so I hate saying this, but I assumed it was junk too, but I was wrong. I see in the chat, yeah, I would pay $2.99. Yeah, I suspect a lot of people are going to feel that way. Can you load additional ROMs or emulators? I don't know that that's been officially announced. I don't know. I'm going to ask Jong in my interview, and then someone else said they're still not interested. Yeah, and I don't blame you. I think that my point is I think there's a place in the market for a few different approaches. Now, it remains to be seen if they're going to execute this well and if this is going to be a well-done multi-cab. We know the specs are there. So we're getting an 8-core processor. We're getting far better processor and GPU than we ever got before with the Arcade 1-Up, with the At Games even. Those are just very simple systems on a chip. How much is the stand? I think the pricing for the stand was previously announced at $150, so it wasn't part of today's announcement. I didn't have that up, but I think if you want that tower for it to sit on, you're going to be paying $150. I think bar top is cool for this. I kind of wish I had a bar in my basement right now because that would be interesting. Um, Someone in the chat said I missed this. Goes watch the scooter video. All right, so to recap, Dragon's Lair is coming on the iiRcade, and it will be included for free. And the sequel will be included from the App Store, so you'll be able to buy the Dragon's Lair 2, I think it's called, once you have the cabinet. Now, that's the reason why I'm excited this cabinet is here, guys, is because they will sell us add-on games. And I recognize that's not for everybody. For some of you, it's going to be all about sideloading your own ROMs, and you'll never hear me shame that. That's totally cool. I do it with my Legends Ultimate. I've got Aliens vs. Predator on there. It plays great. I've got Clax. I don't know if any of you guys ever played Clax, but it's kind of like a puzzle type game. But I like it, and now I can play it on my cabinet. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you got to recognize not everyone wants to do that. It is cool to get the official stuff as long as it's priced well. And iiRcade is the first player to come to the market and say, look, we'll sell you these games. So they're giving us Dragon's Lair for free. The fact that I could buy the sequel is dope. I wish Arcade 1UP had done that with Burger Time and allowed me to add the Ice Cream Factory game to it. Instead, I just don't get to play Ice Cream Factory at all. All right. So looking at the chat, Legends Ultimate is the way to go. Are you supposed to say arcade like a pirate? Yeah, it's a tough name to say. I don't know if it's the world's greatest brand name. But At Games Legends Ultimate is a pretty big mouthful too. Honestly, I think the only company that's really stuck the landing on branding is Arcade 1UP. That's a fun name to say, and it kind of instantly resonates. Someone says, should I buy this scooter? Could only have one. So that's not what this one's about, but if you could only buy one, buy the GT. It's worth the extra money. All right, so we got a question. Do you think this means other Laserdisc games will be a big part of their App Store offerings? I would think. I mean, clearly Space Ace is from the same company as Dragon's Lair, and if you guys know your Dragon's Lair history, and I gotta be honest with you, I did not. I had to look some of the stuff up ahead of time. And you can see I've got the entry in here for the Arcade Museum for Dragon's Lair. So I didn't play this in arcades. I'm not super familiar with this game, but I did read some stuff about it that I thought was pretty cool that I'll get to. But they also did Space Ace, the same company. Also a Laserdisc game, if you guys are familiar with this. And there was, in fact, a conversion kit. So if you bought Dragon's Lair, you could convert it to Space Ace. So the games do kind of go together. But I don't think there's any news about that. I didn't see anything in the press release about Space Ace. They've also not fully announced the games list for the iiRcade. So that is still to be determined. But look, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the main thing here is not going to be the tech. This cabinet will run any of these games that you guys want it to run. We always talk about, oh, Arcade 1UP will never have this game because the tech's not there. This game has the tech, so it's straight. The question is very simply, can they get the licensing, and does the pricing make sense? But if they get the licensing for Dragon's Lair, I think we need to take them probably pretty seriously. I mean, let's wait and see. But none of the other guys have picked up Dragon's Lair, and we know everybody wants it. Wait, XX asks, will there be a special edition for $100 more than Amazon LED strip glued on? I mean, light up deck protector. Yeah, look, I'm going to do a video just on that light up deck protector because it's disappointing. And I don't know if you guys have seen in the forum, somebody has done a homemade light up deck protector. Works a lot better. How does it work better? It properly diffuses the light across the deck. I think a lot of people are mad about that. There's also some anger about the NBA Jam roster. I don't agree with that anger. I think that's a little misplaced. I do think Arcade 1UP did a good job telling us they're not going to have the whole roster. And I'm biased because I just don't care about basketball whatsoever. I just like the game because it's fun to play, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask about that. But when it comes to the deck protector, they absolutely dropped the ball. Somebody asked, feels like Kevin asks, feels like it targets the Legends market more than Arcade 1UP. Yeah, for sure. So I thought Legends, ALU. These names are all so hard to keep straight. I thought the ALU was going to come in a bar top form factor. You guys remember when they did the Legends Pro, which is really like a tabletop or a laptop control panel, and then you hook it up to your TV. That I don't think that product's out yet, but it's been sort of teased. So when they announced that, I thought they were going to do a bar top. And I still think they should have done a bar top. Now, is the market smaller for a bar top than the laptop thing? Yes. But the bar top thing, that would be breaking new ground. No one's done that. The laptop stuff's been around forever. and I think it would have picked up more press traction. So if I ran that company, I probably would have gone a different direction, but I don't. So it's not my choice to make. But yeah, to recap, I think the iiRcade absolutely is targeting the Legends Ultimate more so than Arcade 1-Up. Interestingly, I've seen in some streams a certain gentleman from Arcade 1-Up who kind of makes fun of. I've seen him make fun of the At Games Legends Ultimate announcements. I've seen him make fun of the iiRcade stuff. You know, that's cool, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't know. I personally think it's kind of in poor taste. But who cares? Because at the end of the day, if your product's better and you're bringing the noise, no one's going to not buy an Arcade 1-Up NBA Jam cabinet because this is out. This is a completely different option. But you better believe Arcade 1-Up, I believe they're taking this seriously. So we're talking about how the iiRcade mostly competes with the Legends Ultimate. The caveat to that, this I believe is what has pushed Arcade 1-Up to do DLC. Because this is a DLC cabinet. I mentioned in the beginning, if you weren't on here, Dragon's Lair is coming for free, included in every iiRcade. But if you want to buy the sequel, you can. You just pay extra. I don't know what that price will be. Then you can see it here. Time Warp. Oh, you know what? I actually missed it. Space Age. It's right here. So they didn't send this ahead of time. This was embargoed, and I just had bullet points to look at, and I didn't get the full text. And I'm just reading it now with you guys. Someone asked earlier, will Space Ace be included? Yeah, it will. But here's my big point. If this is pushing Arcade 1-Up to innovate with how they distribute games, giving us more options, giving us more games, then that's a good thing. And I think that's dope. So even if this product isn't for you, we ought to wish them luck. At least I will be. I hope it goes well. Let's see. Just got my $4.99 NBA Jam. Disappointed about the deck protector not returning. Yeah, I've got mine on pre-order. It hasn't come yet. I've debated canceling it and getting the $3.99. The deck protector looks like a meme to me, and I've said that in some of my videos. I don't know why they didn't just do Sandwalk controls. And they keep saying, oh, we're not doing Sandwalk controls. We got these great clones. If you're going to do an upgraded cabinet, give something that everybody values, which is, guess what, better controls. That's a huge piece of the pie for an arcade system. But they don't want to do that. They want to give us light-up deck protectors that probably only have a cost basis for them of $5. $8, maybe less. I really don't know. I'm pulling that out of a hat, but I guarantee you it's in the single-digit dollars. It's not a $40 item. And the fact that they didn't even engineer that deck to diffuse the light properly is really goofy. How do the processors compare between the three competitors? So the iiRcade processor they've retooled, and they're doing a 1.8 gigahertz now instead of a 2.2 gigahertz. I think it's a 6-core processor, but they lowered that clock speed so that they can produce more and not have so many fails. So it's called your yield rate when you manufacture something. You're going to have a percentage of whatever you're manufacturing that doesn't work. It comes out defective. And so your yield rate's going to be that percentage that does work. And so they found if they lower the clock speed a little bit, it does work. That's already way beyond what we get with Arcade 1-Up and Legends Ultimate, but honestly, I'm not familiar with those chipsets because when they first came out, you saw people unhook everything and really dive into these chips, and I think what I saw was they're very similar in capability to the mini console system on the chips that we get, but you're not getting like a dedicated graphics anything. I don't even know if it's a multi-core. It's probably a dual-core processor, but I don't know that for sure. All I know is the stuff on Arcade 1-Up and Legends Ultimate is basic enough that 3D polygon games don't really work or don't work well or fast. And that's just not going to be the case with the iiRcade. So this is an interesting point. So somebody, Jolly Green, you can get Dragon's Lair on the eShop right now for like 99 cents. Yeah, listen, man, I get it. But I did a video with Glenn last week, and we talked about how much should companies charge for these add-on ROMs. You can get stuff on the eShop. You can get stuff on the Android store. You download stuff. I would argue it's not the same thing if it's not hooked up to real arcade controls. I think that's just the differentiator. If you've got an arcade cabinet, arcade controls, history tells us people will always pay a premium for that. And they'll even pay a fortune over the years to maintain these cabinets. So I think that these ROMs, if they come out for an older game, $5-10, I think is probably a good price point. More modern game, a little more than that. But I don't think you can really compare it to the game just randomly being available for cheap. So I don't know. That's my view. I think that the including Dragon's Lair is awesome. I think it's probably inevitable that other companies will have Dragon's Lair. It's just the fact that the new kid on the block hit that announcement first is probably a pretty big coup for them. They also hired a former PlayStation exec, and that guy hopefully will give them some muscle to be able to pick up more licenses. Because that seems to be what Arcade 1-Up has done better than anyone. And it seems to be largely through John D and maybe some other employees they have behind the scenes that we don't hear about. But they've done a really good job with licensing. So if iiRcade's going to win, they're going to have to do probably just as well, or maybe even better, because they got to give us a reason to download all those extra games. Let's see, question. I thought they were working on a Saturn core for ALU. Wouldn't that mean ALU can do 3D to some extent? Yeah, it would. Look, I don't know. I haven't seen the latest. I don't add console games to my arcade. I just think that's goofy. So I've never really looked into it. If it can do 3D games, it's going to be the basic, easy to emulate stuff. And I'm surprised Saturn would be in that list, because Saturn, I think, is somewhat tough to emulate. Is Marvel Pinball worth it? Since all the games are made for virtual. So that's actually a really good question. So that's sort of the hidden story. I'm going to put up the live stream from earlier on from iiRcade kind of in the background. So the untold story of these pinball machines from Arcade 1-Up is that some of them are replicating real pinball machines that have just been adapted to virtual, and some of them are simply all virtual. And the Marvel table, it sounds like, and is that confirmed? I didn't hear that we know that all the tables, but clearly we know Marvel has a ton of pinball tables in FX that are just completely make-believe virtual. I think it depends on who you are, because if you've never played a physical pinball table, do you really care that it's just virtual? I would rather get, so far of everything announced, I would rather get the Attack from Mars, because it was a real table. Now, I'm told it's kind of boring to play virtually, but there'll be other tables included, and they're going to be virtual. And then the artwork, and here's for me the thing, the artwork that you get with the cabinet itself looks like a real pinball table from a while back. And you're not going to get that with an all virtual table. So to me, it's about having it look like a real arcade piece or a real pinball piece, not just some artwork that someone slapped together. And I would say that about Star Wars too, because I don't know if you guys have seen the Star Wars deal, but they that's a funny comment. Let me finish my thought. We'll get to that. So, yeah, anyway, the Star Wars artwork is all over the place. Now, if you guys have seen I think it's Stern did a Star Wars comic book cabinet. Do I have that right, or was it another property? I think it was Star Wars. The artwork for that is dope, and they put a lot of thought and attention to detail into it, and it looks old school, which is what Star Wars fans want right now. They don't want the modern stuff. So it is what it is. At the same time, is Disney saying, hey, you got to put the new characters on there? Yeah, I bet they are. Somebody said I won't spell it out on here, but some unkind gentleman from Arcade 1-Up always downplays Dragon Lair. I guess we know why now. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have two thoughts on him. So on one hand, he's genuine and he does have strong opinions, which I actually dig. I have strong opinions too. And I think that's what we all want to hear from people. On the other hand, I think sometimes there's needless sort of inflammatory. Not everything's for everybody. And I would say that's true too if you're talking about competitors. You know, we all have competitors. In my day job, I have other companies I compete against. On YouTube, there's a million different YouTubers you guys can watch. It just is what it is. Different strokes for different folks. But for some people, they're going to be, I think, excited to have a smaller cabinet that is high quality that they can add games to. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this. Let's see if I missed anything on the news. So I guess we do have pricing here. So all games in the online store are going to range between $2.99. The majority of games will be $5 to $15. So it's kind of weird. I don't know, maybe $3 is like Asteroids and stuff. I don't know. The simpler games. $5 to $15. So I'm glad they've announced that, because we need a stake in the ground for pricing. I view that as pretty reasonable. You guys can let me know in chat. Is in Attack from Mars the FX version? Hopefully, that's a good question. I don't know. I've been assuming it was the physical version, to be honest. But it probably would be easier if it was just ported over from the FX version. So you're probably right that it's not physical. Maybe that's a reason to wait and see on that. The table itself looks gorgeous, though. There's no denying that. They really nailed the look of the cabinet. 170 games have already been licensed, so they haven't announced 170 games. So clearly, they're kind of taking the time with drawing that out. A number of these games that are coming. So this is the preloaded list. I haven't heard of many of these. These aren't your top tier arcade games. Double Dragon and Dragon's Lair is pretty big to be included. Some of these might be great, and I just haven't heard of them. I don't mean to write them off. Fancy World, that sounds a little goofy, but if you guys have heard of any of these, shout it out in the chat if you have an opinion on if it's any good or not. This is another thing that I think it kind of is interesting, but maybe for a different reason than iiRcade is planning. So they talk a lot about you can play modern games on this cabinet, but I don't believe people want to play Fortnite on an arcade. I know it's an extreme example, but I don't see it. I don't see wanting to play truly 3D immersive games with the old school joystick. And by the way, we did get details on what that joystick is today. It's a Sanwa clone, so it's the same thing Arcade 1-Up's been doing. There are really good clones out there, so I don't want to sound like a snob, but it's not coming with the real parts. So apparently Sanwa's bulk pricing is not good because Arcade 1-Up got away from doing that, even though they did it with the Marvel Limited Edition, which I love. I wish they'd do more of it. iiRcade isn't doing it, even though they're spending a lot of money. They're doing a big 19-inch monitor. So they are spending on the components here, but we're still not getting Sanwa. So that tells me there's something going on with Sanwa. Yeah, not familiar with those games. Yeah, that might be true. I think these are probably just your B team games for the most part, aside from Dragon's Lair and Double Dragon. What do you guys think of the pricing? Would you drop $5? Let's take my example. So for Burger Time, it's probably a lot of you like Burger Time. What would you pay to add Burger Time 2 to the cabinet? Or would you just be annoyed it's not there in the first place and it should have been included? Because I think that's valid too. Oh, that's interesting. Rexer says and that was the CES model. That was before they upgraded the monitor and stuff. So honestly, it's possible it's even better now. But he's saying the Sanwa clones, I guess, Rexer, you got to use them in person, right? So you're saying those clones are better than what 1-Up uses. So I'm not really surprised. And I've been saying this for a long time. If you're Arcade 1-Up, you make 100% of your money on the cabinet sale. You got to have your margin there. If you don't have your margin there, you're dead in the water. Because they just don't have other ways to monetize this. I know they have some accessories. Other than the risers, though, I don't know how prolific those accessories are. People mostly just go for the cabinets, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But because they can't sell us DLC, how are they going to be able to afford to maintain online infrastructure for the long run? If they are actively maintaining it. And maybe they're not. Maybe it's just a peer-to-peer model and they're out of it and they just built it. But still, they're going to have to update their software on their end. How are they going to afford to give us higher quality components? Well, they charge us more upfront, which is okay, but the market consistently, people say, I don't want to spend $500 on an arcade with a few games. So I think it's just going to push them to do more and more DLC, sell us a little bit at a time, and then hopefully, and I don't know that I expect this, but I hope, they'll take that energy, that extra money, and reinvest it in better quality components. But that's what iiRcade is doing, at least on paper. They're giving us better quality components, good quality speakers, larger monitor, which is pretty cool. And then they're saying, all right, you got to pay up for the individual games. So we're going to find out if that works or not. I think it does work, but we're going to see. Most of us have accepted upgrading sticks and buttons from stock. Yeah, man, I hear you, but then now you're paying for it twice. And the people always ask this question. I don't think it's a good question, but they'll say, well, why doesn't Arcade 1-Up just sell a blank cabinet? Let us just pick what we want to pick. Well, they're not going to do that because that's not the business they're in. They're in the business of licensing out product that their partners want to see published. And if they're just handing you a blank cabinet, well, they just bypass that whole model. I don't think they're going to do it, but I could be wrong. But I get the sentiment behind it because if you're giving us kind of budget components, don't make us pay for it twice. Let us just buy it once and upgrade it. And if they give it to us blank, then that would be the case. By the way, fun fact, the animators on this game modeled Daphne across a huge list of Playboy models. So it's like a composite of Playboy girls from the era when this game was made. So those were simpler times. I don't think you'd hear that nowadays. And also, they spent over $1 million animating this game. I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about the history of this. I read up on it. A lot of animators who had done work for Disney did work on this game. But I have heard it's notoriously very difficult if you don't know which moves to make. So I don't know how many of us will be seeing that winner screen. I guess if you know which moves to make, though, it just is what it is. So let's see. You guys are saying 99 cents for Burger Time, no more. $5, $3 to $5. So that's interesting. I doubt we're going to see 99-cent games, man. I really do. I mean, by the time they build the infrastructure for a store to even sell us this stuff, keep in mind, too, the publisher, here's really, I think, the key in this pricing. The publisher won't want to see it be too cheap, not just because they want more money, but because they want to protect, I think, the prestige of a lot of these arcade games. The fact that they haven't been released a lot, they've not been super easy to come across, is a big deal. And that there's a lot of brand equity built up. Arcade 1-Up did an awesome job exploiting that because they were the first ones to really make it ready for us to buy in our homes. We all know that history. But what they really were doing were capturing 20, 30 years of energy of people wanting to buy this stuff they just couldn't. So now they can. So once we can buy the individual ROMs, and now you have even more of that. But if it gets too cheap, I suspect some of these companies would be worried it'll make them look bad. Or even just overall cheapen the value. So anyway, guys, that's everything that we know right now. I'll put a link once I post this. So if you guys want to read the press releases yourselves, you can. If anyone's a big Dragon Lair fan, then you should get hyped because now we're going to get this on iiRcade out of the box. As I mentioned, I'm going to do a live stream with their founder. The date, I think it's the 23rd, but when the Kickstarter launches. So we can go through, if you have any questions for him, so some of the questions you asked here, and it's just unknown right now, but they're at the point now where they really are announcing all the detail of their product. So if you have any specific questions, join that live stream and send them in, and we'll make sure we get them in front of them. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you later.